this week. If you remember yesterday, we just wrapped up Numbers, and we are getting ready to dive into Deuteronomy. And so, have any of you guys ever been to like a place in your life where God is reminding you of things in your past that you're like, oh gosh, we don't really want to talk about that one again, God. Let's skip over that. Or there's things that you wish to not remember, but when you do go back to remember those things, you remember the mistakes that you don't want to make. You remember the places that God has taken you. And so that is what we're going to be going through here in Deuteronomy. So God's going to be taking us through a remembrance, if you will, reminding us that when we remember, we obey. And so this morning, 7:47, we're going through the Bible in a year, and we're highlighting Old Testament this year, which is super awesome. But we would love for you to join us if you haven't joined us yet in reading the Bible in a year. Hello, Rick. Hello, Debbie. Hello to my spouse, because he's in the chat this morning. But it's good to have you with us. Hello, Brenda. Hello, Nicole and Liz. Liz, my girl, we talked yesterday. Anyways, we're going to be diving in. I know we're hitting the weekend, so I'm actually going to be covering Deuteronomy 1 through 4, because it's kind of like a little bit into 5, because it's all kind of encapsulated for us. So this morning, remember and obey. So the book of Deuteronomy is pretty much going to be for us. This is recording Moses' last words to the people of Israel before they enter the promised land. So this is really going to be like an overview of what has taken place in Numbers. He's reminding and remembering, right? So right out the gate, Deuteronomy 1:1, it reads, "These are the words that Moses spoke to all Israel beyond the Jordan in the wilderness, in Arba, opposite Sup, between Paran and Topel, Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizahab." And so in this, he's going to be reminding them of two things. One, he's going to be recounting Israel's disobedience and destruction. So this is one of the things that he's reminding them. So he, in the very beginning of the chapter here, he is speaking to the people, and they're getting ready to go on this 11-day journey. So he's reminding them, remember we went for 11 days, and we literally got to the border of the promised land only to have the people disobey and not even enter into the promised land. And because of that disobedience, the older generation ends up dying in the wilderness and not entering the promised land. And that's in Deuteronomy 1:26. It said, "Yet you would not go up, but rebelled against the command of the Lord your God." And then he goes on in Deuteronomy 1:35. "Not one of these men of this evil generation shall see the good land that I have swore to give your fathers." So they get all the way to the border and then don't go. So he's reminding them, because of the disobedience, there was destruction. This generation of people wouldn't go into the promised land. And then this is what really cool happens. So he reminds them of the disobedience, the destruction that follows, so consequences that happen when we are disobedient. And then the second thing that he reminds them of is he reminds them of their obedience and the victory over their enemies that they had. So here we have the death of the old generation, the rising up of a new generation, the coming up of the new that is following them. And these people obeyed the voice of the Lord. And they were able to enter the land, and not only enter the land, but they were able to drive out the enemies that their parents failed to drive out. Deuteronomy 3:3. "So the Lord our God gave into our hand Og, also the king of Bashan, and all his people, and we struck him down until he had no survivor left." So what is this reminding of? So he's reminding us that disobedience leads to destruction. It leads to consequences that we may not want to deal with. It can be harsh and brutal. But when we are obedient, that we're going to have victory, that promises fulfilled even in those things. And so the 2 points Moses is making for us, one, I kind of mentioned at the gate. The first one, don't commit mistakes of the past. This is what he's reminding them at the beginning, right? Deuteronomy 4:3, it says, "Our eyes have seen what the Lord did at Baal Peor, for the Lord your God destroyed from among you all the men who follow Baal of Peor." And we all know how evil this whole Baal guy was, right? So he's reminding us, don't make mistakes of the past. You saw what God did, so let's not repeat and do. I mean, people, they had been wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Let's not repeat and do that all over again. So that's the first one. Second one, Remember how God has been faithful. Deuteronomy 4:9. Only take care and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things that your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. Make them known to your children and your children's children. What have you seen that God has done? He's reminding them also, like, do you not remember how God has provided? Do you not remember how he took us out of slavery? Do you not remember that he's finally got us here when we have finally chosen to walk in obedience and to heed the words in which that he is talking to us, right? Remembrance leads to obedience. And if Israel is remembering God's faithfulness, then they will love him. And out of their love for him, then they will want to obey him. Remembering leads to loving. I love this. I heard it. Remembering leads to loving, and loving leads to obeying. Deuteronomy 5:16. Honor your father and mother as the Lord your God commanded you, that your days may be long and that it may go well with you in the land that your God is giving you. My mom used to tell me this all the time. It was one of those scriptures that I always remember, that if you honor your mother and father, it will be well with you. And this is so true even with our personal life. When we honor and remember the things that God has done for us, and that we are faithful to remember those things and be obedient, forthcoming, that all these good things then tend to follow with us because of us walking in our obedience. So this is all God in Old Testament, right? And Moses is reminding the people, now where does Jesus come into play with all of this, right? Where does New Testament or any of this plug into how Jesus now comes on the scene? So here we go. Are you ready? So instead of God going into Israel, into the promised land to prepare it for them, right? Jesus is teaching something very similar to the disciples, right? He is telling them in John 14:2 that he is going to go to the house of God to prepare a place for us. And I mentioned this yesterday, but John 14:2, in my Father's house are many rooms. And if it not were so, what I have told you that I would go to prepare a place for you. Kind of makes sense, right? You wouldn't send someone to a place if you didn't have any rooms available. So Jesus is telling the disciples, I've got a place for you. I've always got the rooms ready. Now are you going to take the next step and do this part? Are you going to believe what I'm telling you? If they believed in Jesus, then they would love him. And if they loved him, then they would obey him and his commands. John 14:5, if you love me, you will keep my commands, right? This is woven throughout the entire New Testament about reminding us to remember what Jesus had done on the cross, and then we're given instructions on what to do after we remember this. Pastor had an amazing message, if you missed it, all about communion and what it means to remember what Jesus did on the cross for us and to evaluate those pieces of what that was. So if you haven't watched it, I would suggest go on our YouTube channel and go watch it, but it is so powerful to remember what he had did on the cross. If we remember what Jesus has done for us, the sacrifice that he had made for us, then we also too will be filled with love for him, right? And because of that love, there is nothing more that we want to do than to obey what he is saying, obeying what is in his word, what his truth that he is giving to us, right? So if we love Jesus, then we will want to obey him. And this best part right here, so this is my thing, and I don't know, are you, as we're kind of talking and going through this right now, are you recounting the pieces of God's faithfulness in your life right now? Are you remembering the pieces that maybe you grumble about for a few minutes, but then when you remember them and you were good to honor those and hold on to God's word and hold on to the promise that he gave you, that you were seeing the fruit out of that because you were choosing that out of believing in God's faithfulness, out of remembering what he's done, that you are so overcome with love with him that whatever it is that he is asking, that you want to take those steps to continue to be obedient because you want to keep receiving the faithfulness, the goodness, because that's who God is, right? So our past faithfulness, the past faithfulness that when we're obedient and when God is working in our lives, it helps us to see that Jesus is the one who has fully accomplished everything in the past to help create in us love and obedience for the future. Is that not so true? I had this journey mug and I held it up at the beginning, but some of us are in a journey right now, and much like the Israelites were in Old Testament. We're going through hard things. We're going through things where there may be moments of complaining. There may be moments that we are frustrated and up to our eyeballs with things, right? But I also know that in and through those journeys, sometimes we can forget that God is present. We can forget that he's still working. We can forget what he did a week ago or a month ago or when we were teenagers or what he just did an hour ago. I don't know how your morning's going, but we can very easily forget because we get caught up in all the things that don't feel right in the moment, much like the Israelites did when they were wandering in the wilderness, all the way up into the border, right? But if we would just take a few minutes and remember the past faithfulness of God in our life, remember the past faithfulness of Jesus to complete what it is that God sent him to do, to die on the cross for us, that I can't think of any more way that I'm just overcome with how grateful and love him for what he had did for me to make a way so that in turn that I would love him and I would know for my future, it's promised, that I would know there's a room being prepared for me, that I would know because of God's and Jesus's past faithfulness in my life, then I know in the future he's going to be faithful in the things that are coming. So wherever you are today, would this be the phrase for you this morning? Would you remember and obey? That if God was faithful to you then, he's going to be faithful to you now. If God brought you out of something then, he will bring you out of something now. And so this is the words that Moses is reminding the people all throughout Deuteronomy. We're recounting what God has done and rehashing kind of what's been going on in Numbers to see where God is now going to continue to take them. But the cool part about this is that we already know the promise, right? That God sends his son Jesus, and Jesus comes and makes the ultimate sacrifice for us. And he was faithful to do that for us. We see moments in Gethsemane where he could have walked away, but he chooses not to, right? He chooses to finish the process, which God the Father sent him to do. And he does that for us. So I know if he finished that for me, that he's going to finish and do other things for me in the future. And because of that, man, I'm overcome. I'm overcome with love for him and obedience to want to do what he's calling me to do, what his word is instructing me to do. And that is to love him with all my heart, soul, mind, and spirit, right? And to tell others about who he is and to follow in his word. And so that is our encouragement this morning out of the start of Deuteronomy. So enjoy your reading this weekend. Hey, don't forget, when you like this, it's like sharing it with other people. And we want other people to get the good news of Jesus. And so don't forget to like, share it, and maybe drop some comments in there. I love it when you guys are all chatting when we're live, but if you got anything good to drop in, maybe you got questions or stuff you want us to answer on these, that would be so super fantastic. But I love you guys. I am praying for your weekend. I'm excited to see those of you that join us on Sunday in person and in the chat, because I get on there too. But we're excited to see you guys and continuing to dive into the Old Testament. So have a blessed day, and don't forget, remember and obey, because obeying leads to loving Jesus. So hey, let's hit it. You guys have a fantastic day. Love you.